desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocuses, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it. The majesty of Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the glory of the God, the majesty of our God.
Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are fearful heart, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. He will come with vengeance, with terrible recompense. He will come and save you.
Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The haunt of jackals shall become a swamp. The grass shall become reeds and bushes.
A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the holy way. The unclean shall not travel on it, but it shall be for God's people. No traveler, not even fools, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come up on it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Let us pray, O Lord, our Redeemer. You lead us from languishing into sorrow's shadows, into lavish joy, over your abundant restoration. Thank you that you are coming for us to lead us home along your way. Jesus Christ. Amen.
Make Room. It was written in 2017 by Mark Hall, and it's part of a series called the Pilgrim Series. And we have Tim on guitar this morning as well.
Because reading is from Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 25. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now, hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Luke chapter 2, verse 11. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. The word of God for everyone.
Thanks be to God. Now may the words of my lips and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, you who are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. A husband and wife in their late 80s were both becoming extremely forgetful. He would forget where he put his eyeglasses, and then as he went searching for them, he would find something else and forget what he was searching for. That only happens to those people. And she would announce that she was going to the store for butter, but when she got there, she would forget what she was shopping for. One evening, as they were watching TV downstairs in their basement, he stood up and she said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to go get a snack." And she said, "Would you get me some ice cream? And would you write it down? Would you put nuts on it? Would you write that down?" He said, "I can remember, don't bother me. Would you put whipped cream on it?" She said, "And write it down." "I don't have to write it down." So he left. Sometime later, he came back with a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon. And she said, "Where's my toast?" That hasn't happened yet to Laura and I. But people are forgetful. And sometimes during the Christmas season, when a large number of Lutherans were asked, "What are you celebrating during Christmas?" Most of them said it's about families getting together. And when others are asked about it, well, it's about singing Christmas carols. It's about any number of things which we all do at Christmas time. It's shopping and so on. But there weren't that many that said it's about the birth of Jesus. And that's a part of what Christmas is about. But maybe Christmas is more about the passion. We always relate passion to Easter. Particularly with the major hit a few years ago, the Passion, the suffering of Jesus. But really, Christmas is about the passion of God for us. And we sometimes forget that. And it's a passion that in a season that for me is filled with wonder and is filled with joy. And I'd like to share 3 stories with you. Not real long. So relax. The first one was in this week's Boston Globe on the 11th, I think it was. And it's happening in Amsterdam. It's been going on for over 6 weeks. It's a worship service. Has never stopped in those 6 weeks. There are 520 ministers so far that are involved in that church service. There are approximately 20 different denominations, slightly under 20, that are involved. And it all has to do because there's a law in the Netherlands that says when a worship service is going on, any family there is in sanctuary. And there's a migrant's family from Africa that was seeking refuge. And they're in the church. And the law in the Netherlands is if the church service is not going on, we can go in and take people out. So this group of Christians worship 24 hours a day, riding some on their bikes to get there, to lead the service. One of the boys in the family makes this comment, or a girl, I'm sorry, the eldest child. She writes about the relief of having a granted shelter. I often think the only place where I am safe is in the church. Those pastors have passion. Those churches have passion for this family. That's my first Christmas story. A story that fills me with wonder. The second story comes out of a book called The Seasons of Your Heart by Macrina Wider-Keller. I've had this book for some time because my mother-in-law had a book by Macrina Wider-Keller and called Tree Full of Angels, in which Laura and I delighted in the book. Beautiful book of meditations. She's a Roman Catholic nun. And she tells a story based on the scripture that you read from Romans. And I want to just paraphrase that scripture for a moment. It appears to me that whatever we suffer now will show up only dimly when compared to the wonders God has in store for us. It is as though all creation is standing on tiptoe, longing to see an unforgettable vision, the children of God being born into wholeness. Although creation is unfinished, still in the process of being born, it carries within it a secret hope. And the hope is this: a day will come when we will be rescued from the pain of our limitations and incompleteness and to be given our share in a freedom that can only belong to the children of God. At the present moment, all creation is struggling, as though in the pangs of childbirth. And that struggling creation includes even those of us who have had a taste of the Spirit. We peer into the future with our limited vision, unable to see all that we are destined to be, yet believing because of the hope we carry so deep within. And a friend of mine shared this remaining part this week with me. And Rita Meyer writes about this. She gives us the beautiful vision of creation straining forward on tiptoe, eagerly waiting for the deliverance from pain. And then she gives this story about herself, which I did not know. Holding this passage up against my own life, Macrina writes, I am deeply touched how personal it has become for me. My own birth into this world began with the proclamation of death. I was proclaimed dead, set aside as not living by the doctors. The nurse, I am told, took me, worked with me, believed in the spark of life in me, and she convinced me I could breathe. Meditating on this story, I am filled with a mixture of anger, tenderness, gratitude, and hope. How easy it would be to throw someone away right in the middle of their birth. I speak not only of that first birth, but of the many ways we are born each day. And then she writes this. There was a day in July many mornings ago. So this Christmas story happens in July. 7:15 a.m. to be exact, when my hope was so small, I didn't know I was alive. The doctor placed me aside and announced the sad news of my death right in the middle of my birth. But God was good and gave someone enough hope to believe in me. She leaned forward, believing in darkness what some folks refuse to believe in the light. She believed in me and she held me as though the stirring of the eternal had just begun, as though the mystery within was just being born. And the joy of it is she was right. Because of her hope in me, I live. And ever since that day in July, the mystery within me has grown. The eternal within keeps stirring anew like a fountain of living water, like a spring that never runs dry. Could it be true that some folks die because our hope is too small to bring them forth? It is good to remember we do not give birth to ourselves, we give birth to others. By believing in that first small spark of life, the spark we can hardly see, it is called hope. It's extremely helpful at birth. The wonder, the joy, she said, of being born. And the third story is about a boy named Eric, who's 1 year old. His mom and dad, at that time, lived in Los Angeles, but they were in San Francisco for Christmas on Christmas morning. And they had celebrated Christmas. Eric had a 6-year-old brother at that time. They had to drive back to Los Angeles, which is approximately 400 miles. That's a big state, huh? From one end to the other, and that's not even one end to the other in California. But they had to both be back to work the next day. And her husband and herself, her first name was Nancy, and she tells this story about going into a restaurant in the middle of the day on their trip home. When they went in, there was only one person in the restaurant besides the waiter. And this one person was very unkempt. She describes it that his coat had been worn so long, stained, dirty, his hands were grimy, and he was loud. Because she said the only words that my 1-year-old knew was hiya. It wasn't hi, you, hiya, one word. And when he sat down, and we put him into the high chair, which was metal, he went bang, 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 and he looked over at the guy and he said, hiya! And the guy yelled back, hi! And banged some more, hiya! And the guy responded, and the fellow said, you play peekaboo? And tried to play peekaboo with the little boy. And Eric would yell, hiya! And they went back and forth, and she said, I looked at my husband and wanted to kind of disappear. Didn't know whether to feel sorry for the guy over there who seemingly had been drinking as well, and or whether we should just eat and run, you know. And so as this conversation went on between Eric and this other, with this gentleman at another booth, and they continued talking or jabbering to one another through the meal and getting louder and louder. And my 6-year-old, she's right, he wanted to crawl under the table and was so glad there wasn't anybody else there. And it went on. And finally, my husband said to me, I'm going to go out to the car. And took the other boy, and he said, he said, you pay and you get out as quick as you can and bring it here. So she said, I got up, and I want to read this part to you. I got up from the table, and Eric, my son, was leaning from my arms down to this man as we walked by him. And I tried to get more space away from him. In a split second of balancing my baby and turning to counter his weight, I came to eye with this old man. And his eyes seemed to say to me, would you let me hold your baby? There was no need for me to answer because Eric was leaping out of my arms at that point, kicking and into the arms of this man in this greasy, dirty, worn coat. And suddenly, a very old man and a very young baby, young child, consummated their relationship by holding one another. Eric laid his tiny head upon the man's ragged shoulder. The man's eyes closed, and I saw tears coming down his eyes. His aged hands, full of grime and pain and hard labor, gently, so gently, tapped the back of my baby in his butt and just held it. The old man rocked and cradled Eric. And then his eyes opened and set squarely on mine, and he said in a firm, commanding voice, you take care of this baby. And somehow I managed, I will. And he pried Eric from his chest unwillingly, lovingly, as though he was in pain. I held my arms open to receive my baby, and again the gentleman addressed me. God bless you, madam. You've given me my Christmas gift. I said nothing more than a muttered thanks, and with Eric in my arms, I ran for the car. My husband, Dennis, wondered why I was crying and holding Eric so tightly, and why I was saying, my God, forgive me. I would suggest to you that in this story, you and I are, and God is. Eric is God. You and I are the old man. We're tattered, we're torn, we're not perfect. We have our wounds, we have our brokenness. Eric doesn't care that this old man is grimy. Eric embraces it. And that's what Christmas is. God embracing us. Emmanuel, God with us. Got room for a fourth story, but I think we'll take the offering.
I've been traveling a dark and deadly road, sometimes so lonely, but never really alone. And no wonder I've been under the wings of a godly soul. For sure, I want to show you this Oh, don't wonder, I can prove it's true. There is a power not from this world. I found a power, a higher power. I'm walking